Gibson, and I am the host of Anti-Media Radio on UCY.tv.
You get up and howl about America and democracy. There is no America. There is no democracy. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business. And I have chosen you to preach this evangel.
For all my free market healthcare robbing, stock stealing, retirement fund fucking with niggas. Fuck you little credit card scamming, jewelry stealing, crack selling, liquor store robbing motherfuckers. Shout to the homies, Carnegie, OG, Willie Randolph Hearst, Baruch, Rockefeller, the real Rockefeller, my main bitch Leona, pour out a little Louis XIII, Scott Rothstein, Jack Abramoff, hold your head, my roll top niggas, let's get this money. I spend my day pepping America overseas, pension for the workers, nigga please, embezzlement, etiquette, private settlement, I'm better with Confederate rhetoric from my mansion in Connecticut, foreclose of it, close out the tenement, I twist words like a speech impediment, I hope you got good credit bitch, if not better get a new job with benefits, while I play golf with niggas to get cheddar with, new money buys brand new carrots, my old money bunch of great grandparents, you got grills in your mouth, I ain't mad at ya, I own every gold mine in South Africa. Thanks, baby, you made me $1 billion. Plus, I own a building for each one of my children's children.
All right, good evening, everybody. Welcome to UCY.tv. Another night, live radio with Chris J. and Voice of Rebellion. Tonight is March to Martial Law, Descent from Freedom to Fascism. From 1913 until today, as well, we can expect what we can expect once martial law is enacted, and how we can protect ourselves. Welcome, everybody from RealLibertyMedia.com. The redirect posted there to UCY.tv right here in chat. So welcome, listeners there. And just a little short announcement before Chris comes in. I'd like to give a little pre-adios as I step away from the mic for a little while. 3 more weeks here producing at the switchboard for Chris, and we will welcome your calls a little bit later. It's time for me to move along and do another chapter in life, which my steps I'll kind of watch a little close and see where they take me, but I do have some plans that I never follow plans, but we'll see how that works out. Anyways, I'm very proud to have been along here with Chris, and as I say, I'll be stepping away for a little while. I have 2 more broadcasts of This Is No Time for Rational Thinking, noon Fridays, Central Time, and we'll be closing that out, and something to come back to. So as I get out on the road, I probably might be doing a few shows. I'll call it On the Wander, and when I come back with another series, it will be called Rounding the Edge, and I'm going to come back and represent a lot of information and try to do it more better and have some better ways of saying what I have said. Anyways, hey Chris, I really appreciate having been able to be a part of what you do. I'm very proud of what you do. You're an incredible young man. Been doing radio for as long as I have, at least I guess 3 years, and incredible amount of information that you bring from history. So congrats, brother, and thank you for letting me be a part with you.
Well, yeah, I can say the same to you, Vince, because that's been really a while, 7 months or so since you became main studio guy. And when CP Libre departed, that was the last time we had a co-host here at Voice of Rebellion. And since then, you kind of adapted yourself into becoming, even though you weren't officially a co-host, you kind of adapted yourself into the role and being my studio guy and just being my wingman on the show. And it's kind of stuck not having you after, it's not kind of, it is going to suck a lot when you are gone from the show on June 12th. But I have to say is that we we got a lot of info out, and hopefully sometime down in the future, you'll rejoin the show after you deal with all that you need to deal with. And it's definitely over my 3 years of being on the radio here on Voice Rebellion Radio, and before that when we were still Revolution Radio, yeah, I have to say is that I don't know if anybody was really behind me quite like Vince was during this 7-month span from October to now, and we still got to. And I gotta say is that we still got a few more shows to go. I mean, we have today, and then we have 3 more shows to broadcast, and tonight's show is gonna be great. And with all that set aside, is that this is going to be a huge show because of the fact that it's going to be a lot of information, important information, talk about martial law, what you expect to see when it's enacted, and what how you're going to survive it. What can you do to actually survive martial law and protect yourself? Hopefully some people get in discussion tonight. And martial law, you know, people think of it as conspiracy theory. People think of it as maybe a very far remote possibility. But to people in the truth movement, it's a almost definite certainty because it's been in the plans. It has went slowly that way, and when it actually happens, it's not going to be that more drastic compared to if we went straight from that where we were. You know, I said that 1913 is the year it really started, all the way up to today, 2016, and 2017, whenever the actual martial law is enacted, which I believe will be not too long after this presidential nominee, or I mean when these presidential candidates wins, doesn't matter which one, which I believe Hillary Clinton has been selected to win from the very beginning, and she will win, as Donald just isn't in their plans and wasn't in their plans 8 years ago. Hillary was in the plans to succeed Barack Obama since the start of it, and Obama said it's closer to martial law, and Bush said it's closer to martial law. You see gradual going all the way back. The last one that was trying to reverse that was JFK, who warned us. The CIA warned us of the FBI and other major agencies that were working against civil rights and working against the liberties and freedom that the United States people believed that they enjoyed. But it was going to be eroded away, which already had been eroded away at that point. But JFK was trying to reverse it, trying to end the terrible 50 years of the Federal Reserve, which the Federal Reserve is how the super rich control this country. It's purely by the money, and they get to control our military with it. They get to control our society. They get to control the country because they also control the laws. They control the media.
Chris, I'm sorry to interrupt you. I forgot to say, well, we were talking pre-show, but so I'm running this through a Sound Blaster right now. Before I'd been using 2 computers. So with this way I'm going right now, I'm hoping for better quality on audio because my other computer is like a motorboat over there. But anyways, I'm going to try something now, and I'm not sure that it works, and I hope that it does because I have no ability to mute this that I can understand. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to unplug my mic, and I think that will mute me. And then when you want to, if you'd like to holler back at me and bring me back in, give me a second or so, and I'll plug back in. So right now I'm going to
hopefully that'll work.
Then I'm going to say something.
The audio quality. Yeah, it just simples. I mean, it will just take you a second, right, to replug back in if I just tell you to replug back in at whatever time during the show. So, yeah, we should go ahead with that. But what was in that train of thought I was saying is that we've been so long on this path of martial law, and now that's almost here, people seem to deny it so fervently. It was such people make conspiracy theories look crazy, or the truthers look crazy. They try to make the people that actually are telling, warning us about this seem crazy. And there's one guy that's very responsible for them having a case has been Alex Jones, who's been a profiteer on the fear of martial law. Rather than telling people really how we got here with full detail, or how to protect themselves in full detail, really how to protect themselves in general. He's just put a lot of fear and sold a lot of products that probably won't help too much in this scenario. Talking about locking yourself down in a bunker or something like that, and surround yourself with doomsday supplies, and surround yourself with water and prepackaged foods. That's not going to work too well. And I think that there's a few keys I'll discuss, and I'd like to hear the discussion, what some people's ideas are to evade some very more dangerous parts of martial law. And there's definitely, it can be evaded, because it has been in the past. People have escaped from martial law countries like Nazi Germany and other countries like that. So I think that's definitely possible, that this won't be too much of a hindrance where people won't be able to escape, or won't be able to perhaps even live a somewhat normal life, but maybe somewhere off the grid. I would be thinking we are compelled, I think a lot of times as Americans, the average American doesn't want to believe it, because martial law is everything that is against the values our country is supposedly founded on. And it looks like it's becoming more and more a reality and closer to martial law. And it's already a police state, but martial law hasn't came into effect, which would officially set this country under the law of the military, constitution. Everything's suspended. None of that has any more weight once martial law is fully enacted, which could happen for whatever reason. Martial law, it could be enacted for a pandemic, a major terrorist attack, which would be probably a false flag, a world war, a major natural disaster. A few other things could justify the enactment of martial law sometime in the future. But it would only be an excuse for something that they've had planned for a long time, going back more than just a few years or a few decades, but over a century. We're talking about 103 years since the Federal Reserve was founded, and that's when the elites took control of this country. And with that, since then, we've had World War I, World War II, that the United States war, well, especially World War I, that war, the United States had absolutely no part in, and it was right after the Federal Reserve gained control of the United States that the United States has run into war that they had absolutely no part in over there in Europe, fighting for Britain, France, and these countries that up to that point, or very close to that point, were superior to the United States in military technology and military strengths, against a country that they kind of chose to go to war with, Britain and France. And you look at who instigated it, is that the idea that Serbia was completely innocent of the instigation of the World War can be disputed. Disputed heavily. Germany Germany didn't even instigate anything, because the start of it was Austria-Hungary and Serbia were clashing at each other, and after the assassination of an Austro-Hungarian archduke, after that, the Austro-Hungarian Empire wanted to set some rules on Serbia in the wake of what just happened. They wouldn't obey, so they considered that a declaration of war, which, today sounds ridiculous, but you see events around the world, and this really, when you look at it, is that what had just happened is that one of their top leaders was killed, and they wanted some way to gather some intelligence and stuff like that to prevent things like that, and they wouldn't abide by that. It definitely seems like a very hostile / war action if you look at it that angle. Of course, there's other angles. Of course, the Austro-Hungarians actually did enter and shoot first. Actually, it's disputed. I think the Serbians were waiting for the Austro-Hungarians when they were going to enter, but who actually fired the first shots of the war? Yes, the Austro-Hungarians. Who actually set the path for war was the Austro-Hungarians. But the United States, the funny thing was all that is like all these foreign terms, foreign countries, the United States is involved in this. And that was because the Federal Reserve controlled the United States and was able to do the agenda that the elite bankers wanted there. And then you see the United States get involved in Vietnam, and get involved in Iraq, Afghanistan, now Syria. And what's sad is that I see people, my generation, joining the military despite that they know, they have to know. There's on the internet all these lists of the crimes that our United States military has committed in recent years in Iraq and Afghanistan, dropping white phosphorus on innocent civilians in Fallujah, and many other events in Afghanistan, massacres by paramilitary soldiers who have been subcontracted by the United States. There's been, in Syria, the United States de facto supporting terrorists. And yet, people will still volunteer to join. They don't even need a draft anymore because this generation, what it seems to be, is that they're more complacent than the generations in the past. And they have all this access to the internet. Imagine if they actually knew what was going on. If the previous generations actually knew what was going on, with all the angst, that's not even the right word, but all the passion that they had, it would be a revolution. You saw that in the 70s. The massive protests led to the end of the Vietnam War because the government had become so unpopular during the Vietnam War. Now people are cheering it on. And you see these very sad events where they pretend to care about the veterans when they come home, like what I saw the other day. And then the sad thing is the guy that's representing the soldiers, acting like he's just another soldier, was Prince Harry, who, yes, he was actually, he went over to Afghanistan, but he didn't have any real front line duty. He had cape duty. And he's going to act like he is suffered the same as those injured veterans, missing limbs and stuff like that. And these are the pathetic appeals by the elites of the British government, the United States government, the Western governments to pretend like they care about the veterans. And then they act like, for example, that they don't give any credit to Russia, who actually takes care of their veterans. And you see they're treated with a lot of respect. You don't see, for example, you'll see old people here in Florida wearing Iwo Jima hat or World War II hats, and you don't see anybody say anything about it. And they just act like they're just another crotchety little person. In Russia, that wouldn't happen. They'd be like, there'd at least be a thank you, much gratitude to you, kind sir, something like that in there. I'm not saying I support the wars, but I'm saying it's even more disgusting how they throw away the soldiers like pawns. As Kissinger said, is that military men are pawns to be used in foreign policy. That's what Henry Kissinger, a top foreign policy expert, in quotations, for many years to the United States government, had to say about veterans and soldiers, is that, and he was at that position for 30-something years, and he was all the way from Nixon to Obama was part of the government. People don't even know who the hell he is. And how's this waste of this waste of a human? He's so honestly overweight, looks to be in poor health, but yeah, he's 90-something years old and he's still alive. And you see that it almost seems like these elites must have some secret medical technology that we don't see as normal civilians. Or as you see, David Rockefeller, 99 years old, and he's already had he already looks like his face has fallen off, but yeah, he's still alive. These people are absolutely evil. Rockefeller, Kissinger, we're talking about people responsible for millions of deaths. People don't even know who they are, but people are more scared of Putin, or they're more scared of Assad. People actually fighting against these guys, fighting against the New World Order, and protecting their countries from the New World Order plans. But our media puts it for 24/7. be scared of these people, be scared of these people. And then when there's a terrorist attack in the future, that it's going to be a false flag, and they're going to blame it on one of these countries that they've told the people to be scared of for years and years and years. And that'll be right there, martial law, and 70% of America will support it because so much of America is uninformed, relies completely on CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, and it's changing. The information war is definitely going towards our way, but is it going fast enough is the question. Is there enough people in the alternative media that are participating? And is the alternative media, is the slander against the alternative media that's being put on the media actually working to deter people from listening to the alternative media? It seems like a possibility because you see people making jokes about what RT and Press TV and these other news networks represent, but yet they'll be watching CNN, Fox, MSNBC, all this corporate, elite-owned news. It's absolutely certain, isn't it? That's how brainwashed, how asleep a lot of America is. And, it seems like I'm going on to a rant here and just, I'm just berating the United States public. But I'm berating the people that have seen what's going on and either just don't care or are out of spite, I think, almost. Not out of simply wanting to diss us, tell us that we're crazy and that we're dumb. But that's obviously not the case, and we've obviously researched, and I think that not believing the system and wanting change, that makes us very normal, very well-minded, because the alternative is very crazy. But this is normal and well-minded. And on top of all this, we get attacked from trolls on the internet. That you see the government, and it definitely shows that the information war must be going our way because they pay people thousands of dollars a month just to sit in a cubicle and type away on a computer, posing as regular people on Facebook when they're really government agents and working for Mossad and other news sources to discredit us on the internet. But the truth is that all their attacks are not really working. You see what happens with a lot of these trolls is that a lot of times 90% of the feedback that they get will be negative on their behalf. So it's how successful is their programs really going towards that. And they put that right out in the open how the martial law is nearby. And I think they're kind of putting their feet in the water to see how far Americans are going to take it. Are they going to allow this to happen? And they did helm. They eventually started talking about the mainstream media, and a lot of people didn't care. It was these giant military exercises. They were training for nothing else than martial law out west. Out in Florida, down by Fort Lauderdale, they were doing martial law exercises. Out in the Southwest, they were doing martial law exercises of many sorts. It was huge numbers. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of soldiers. I think it was tens of thousands of soldiers were mobilized for these exercises. For a military that only has a few million active military, and it is in the midst of a war, really 2 or 3 wars that the United States military is involved in, and there's a few other wars that they're involved in, a minor amount, but there's a few wars that they're involved in to a greater extent with Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and now you see that even more soldiers are being sent into Syria right now. We have boots on the ground Syria, they have the airstrikes now in Syria, and they have other military support in Syria at the moment, but they're going to act like that this is not all happening, that there is no boots on the ground in Syria, that they stuck to their promise of no boots on the ground in Syria, or they'll say that they didn't say in the first place, or they'll act like they're keeping their promise of no boots on the ground in Syria, but really There's over 100 soldiers that they're omitting, probably a lot more. I think they're spending boots on the ground in Syria for almost the entire time since the operation was announced. And currently, the United States military is doing all kinds of airstrikes that they do airstrikes sporadically, but most of the time they do damage against Syrian Arab Army sites. They do damage against warehouses, oil refineries, and much other stuff that belongs to the Syrian Arab Army and sites a lot of times that have absolutely no correlation with what they're supposedly saying that they're doing. And then you see where the ISIS still has a lot of ground is in eastern Syria, and the United States is doing their attacks in eastern Syria, and they still haven't been able to stop them, apparently. But the Russians can go in there in 1 week and absolutely crush it over western Syria. And now ISIS is being pushed down into the desert. These other terrorist groups are being pushed out into the desert at last. But it's still, Syria is completely in ruins on many parts. Aleppo has been damaged majorly. And we have Homs, Raqqa, and Damascus has been really the only major city that's been able to avoid the attacks. But that's because they had to protect that. It's their capital. If the Syrian Arab Army loses that, they potentially lose the war. At this point in the Syrian civil war, they act like on the mainstream media that it's a ceasefire. But in reality, the fight continues. The Syrian Arab Army is fighting hard in many major cities, and the United States is still striking here and there, and Israel striking here and there. In fact, just this week, since the last show, a Hezbollah leader was killed by Israel, which Hezbollah gets a bad rap from Western media. And I'll say it right here, I don't care what controversy it stirs up, but Hezbollah fights against Zionist-supported terrorism. They've been a major fight against Al-Qaeda, a major fighter against Al-Qaeda, ISIS, the Taliban, Khorasan, whatever terrorist groups in the Middle East, and they've been major ass kickers of those. And the United States calls them a terrorist group. The United States a lot of times prioritizes the shaming of them on the media more than actual terrorist groups, because they're actually funding those terrorist groups that they claim to be against. But Hezbollah, they are against in reality. And ask the people of Syria and Iraq who've seen them try to help them, but the United States does stuff against them, and Israel has declared them to be practically mortal enemies. Because Hezbollah has been one of the only armies in the Middle East to actually do, I think, direct victories against Israel in combat during, I think, the 80s Beirut War. Hezbollah was actually fighting them directly and won in some places. But Hezbollah is a legitimate resistance group. And saying what I'm saying right now, it puts me in a very risky situation. I understand that. Other people do that kind of stuff on the media, and those other people, I give them credit, because really at this point, whatever I said to get on some kind of list, I mean, it's just like there's not too much more that I could do. It's like that will stop me from whatever, not getting on a plane, not be able to renew my driver's license. I don't know. They could do all the typical stuff to screw with me. That they do other activists. That I've seen other ways. I think that me and my family have been screwed with because of the activism that I participate, or the activism that I kind of start via Voice of Gun Radio and getting this group of people behind the show. And I'm hoping that people spread the same information. And by calling in, you're being a part of the activism. And we need more activists out there, and more young activists, because youth are the vanguard of revolution. And right now, well, it's like people are waking up, and it's like right now is a very big few week span right now in what the consciousness of the United States. Because as people start to realize what our options are going to be in this election, people are going to start to realize how absolutely fucked we are if we continue to do this status quo bullshit of D versus R. And, you know, people say, well, vote libertarian or something like that. And I support that for a protest vote, something like that, libertarian, green, whatever. But it's not, I don't believe it's going to get anywhere because they rigged the elections there where it would be never allowed to happen. It's not like Gary Johnson that's going to, even if he gained 57% of the United States vote and actually went out there, he wouldn't even get 51%. He wouldn't even get 15%, the polls would reflect. And here's the thing is that because you can't go out there and ask everybody who they voted for, it's kind of hard to actually prove without paper receipts who actually voted for who. We don't have paper receipts on a voting machine. And that's a major sign by electoral committees that spend a lot of time investigating elections around the world. One of the major telltale signs of a fraudulent election is no paper receipt. Venezuela gets paper receipts. The United States doesn't. The United States has electronic machines that have about as good of an accuracy rate as probably, I don't know, what would be in comparison to what, you know, what, this is, to me, the electronic machine is like taking, it's like taking your bar exam on a Nokia or something like that. I don't know, like download it onto a Nokia phone. It's about as ridiculous as that. So the United States can't claim that they have a free and open election when we have two parties that are exactly the same, both supported by Wall Street and both fascists. They both are taking away our civil liberties and giving more power to corporations. And people say, well, corporations create jobs, and without that, our economy would be crumbling down. But right now, we are in a system of cronyism from the United States government with corporations, and are working together to stay in power. And they are strangling the economy because they're not allowing, they're crushing all this, everybody beneath them. And now they're being we're completely dependent on them to give us a job. And then what happens with that is that they start cutting jobs because of automation and stuff like that. And eventually their goal is to make as much profit. So if they could get rid of every employee and they don't have to pay a single employee, that would be great for them. So they're going to get to that way eventually. Don't be fooled that by giving corporations more power that they're eventually going to give you a job in the long run. Because that's about as dumb as the trickle-down theory of economics, which people who believe in the trickle-down economics, theory of economics, well, 30 years later, they're still poor. And it's the same way for the other side. You know, talking about the Democrats or whatever, that believe that their politicians are going to somehow help them out and give them a piece of a better piece of the pie than they have right now. They're fooled as well, because their piece of the pie gets smaller and smaller. Look at what Barack Obama did to many low-income families, is that they cut the food stamps even lower. I mean, what is it? Like, you get like less than $100. You know, talk about a single person, you know, family, like $400 a month. You really, at that point, you're stuck eating GMO garbage. Doesn't give it your chance to feed your family healthy meals. Definitely not. If you went to the grocery store recently, and I know that Florida is one of the cheapest places to go and shop, and it's really expensive to eat healthy here. But like people that make low wages, it's very, very, very hard to eat healthy and to find food that doesn't have the GMOs and all that. And people will say, well, GMOs are there's science to prove that they're bad for you. Even if it was that logic, there's no science that there's no science to prove that they're good for you either. And so now you're saying, well, that's a very risky position to take, but there's actually science to prove that they're fucking bad for you. They give this shit to lab rats, and they get a fucking tumor the size of half the rat. If that doesn't tell them it's bad for you, lab rats are like the fucking gold standard of science when talking about anatomy, biology, and all that. kind of stuff. They test all kinds of stuff on rats because they have a very similar anatomy to us, despite being a such smaller creature. And it's kind of weird, isn't it? Because they're a rodent and we're a primate. But that'd be pretty wrong to test on primates. So, I mean, it's wrong to test on any animal, I think, to an extent either way. But I guess it would feel wronger, having to test that kind of stuff on chimpanzee or something like that. I digress by saying that ultimately this country is being the people that have subscribed to either the DNR thoughts, they're practically the same in the long run, have been so duped and so fooled, and after this 2016 election, they're really going to feel stupid. And hopefully that doesn't kill the morale where we don't have a revolution in this country. Because we have the power and the people power, and we have a lot of able-bodied men, a lot of arms out in this country, unless they get confiscated soon, to do a revolution. But there's a big problem with Americans is that they're very inept to be actually active and do anything like that, compared to some of our foreign counterparts, like what happened in Egypt when they overthrew Morsi. They literally had 30 million out there staying in the streets. 30 million of us in D.C. would be plenty. But could we get this? Or what about in what happened? What's happened in Guatemala? They were through that corrupt government recently and had hundreds of thousands in the streets of Guatemala, and it actually were successful. So there's successful revolutions take huge numbers, but really compared to the percentage of the population, it's not that big a number. Martial law could be all avoided by, in the past, Americans taking more action and keeping our government in check, or, well, not allowing this government to even be created, and we could have stopped martial law by having a revolution a while ago. I don't know. Now it seems unlikely that a revolution would be formed prior to martial law because the events that leading up to martial law seem to be right there. The handwriting has been carved into the wall, and that means that we're talking about a massive war in Syria. We're talking about the eventual backdoor of the United States into Iran, which Syria and Iran have a mutual defense pact. So if the U.S. goes into Syria, that means the U.S. goes into Iran. And we're also talking about an economy that's been predicted by many economists to crash very soon. There's a lot of, with all our allies' economies, currencies crumbling, Canada, Mexico, Colombia, Turkey, all these economies are doing very bad right now. And people talk about all day long this distraction story that even the alternative media has been fooled by. A lot of people in the alternative media has been Venezuela and talk about their struggles recently, which was a lot of manipulation, a lot of false pictures. That one picture of that empty supermarket where people can't find anything in the shelves, that's not Venezuela. It's fucking New York. That's fucking New York. And people think that they see a title on a picture and they see some Latin people, I guess, in a supermarket, and they automatically assume must be, well, it matches up. Unless they get around to just spend some Latin neighborhood in the United States, and yeah, there was food on the shelves, gets a late stock delivery or something like that. Or maybe we're having some shortages ourselves. But in Venezuela, the shortages have been caused by sanctions, have been caused by it's crippling sanctions that have been put by the United States and the EU or the United States and Israel have instigated the sanctions, and the EU can't trade with Venezuela. A lot of countries in Asia can't trade with Venezuela. So you're left with just a few countries in South America that can trade with Venezuela, and the sanctions, it's really causing only a few countries can trade with each other, and they're being excluded from the world. But let me remind you, Cuba survived for 60 years and eventually did very well when you got to the late 2000s and currently. And it's like right when they started doing good, that's when the world decided they want to trade with them. So they survived the blockade, and I think Venezuela can survive the blockade as well. There were some tough times in the 60s in Cuba, but Venezuela could definitely survive their own 60s, which is right now. By historical perspective, you think that people in the 60s would have rised up, is what by just frustration and anger, and would have taken out the Cuban government of Castro then. But people realized it was much better than going back to the mafia fascist Batista and his government. Mafia fascist Batista government who murdered tens of thousands of Cubans and sold his country out completely. 40% of Cuban land was owned by people that weren't even from Cuba. And even JFK didn't like Batista. JFK, untold story about history is that even our own president supported Fidel Castro. JFK supported Fidel Castro because he believed Batista and his government to be heavily corrupt and to be murderous. The mafia fascist government of Batista was so bad that there's almost no supporters of it inside the country. It's not even like some other countries where there's at least a few dopes, a few idiots that still support that old way. But the supporters, there's only a few of them in the United States. And what he did to get power was actually he told the Cubans, he did a coup in 1952, and then he pretty much told the Cubans that this is my way, and then if you go against it, you're gonna be sent to the firing line, the firing squad, and if you don't like it, you can leave, or you can, and that's it. The left people only was a choice to join the revolution, and eventually, after 6 years fighting, Batista was deposed, and all this stuff that happened in the 70s to today in Cuba, if you don't count the 60s, really it was way much better than the time of the 50s in Cuba. It was definitely no golden age. It was definitely no time of like in the 50s, bright and comfortable here in the United States. It was dark and murderous for Cuba. And people went through some of the harshest conditions to fight for the revolution, and people that didn't give up, and they fought for 6 years, and then eventually one night they forced Batista to run away, and they took over the city. And from 1959 on to all the way up to today, and now it seems that Cuba has reached, the world wants to open up for Cuba ahead of the succession from Raul Castro to Miguel Diaz-Canel, the next considered to be the successor of Cuba, to try to make sway them, and then they can put and do some kind of sneak in, and they put a Rothschild central bank inside of Cuba, a country that's held out all this time. Venezuela is another country that doesn't have a Rothschild central bank. And you see how hard the international bankers are pushing on Venezuela. they're strangling their economy right now. They're threatening to invade the United States and Colombia, who Colombia is a puppet of the United States imperium. And the U.S. and Colombia could do a joint invasion if Maduro isn't taken out by their inside guys inside of Venezuela. Instead, Maduro could be taken out by a war, which the United States has threatened before, war with Venezuela, and they're not shocked. It's the very bold and tough stance that they've taken over the years.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
Hey, we got a caller, 714 area code. How are you? Welcome to Voice of Rebellion with Chris J.
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, this message is for Chris.
Right on. Chris, this is calls for you. Who's calling, please?
Yeah.
My name's Adolf.
Hey, wait, who is this?
You know,
Adolf. Hello?
You kind of sounded unclear. Did you catch that name, Vince?
I'll call back in a second.
okay, call right back then, bro.
I think I know that number out in 714, so I think I know possibly who that is. So I'm pretty sure it's a West Coast number. And I have a couple of people that I'm pretty close with. We're close to Stable Radio, and we still are pretty close on Facebook out there. So in case one of them out there calling into the show, that would be really cool. Yeah, I guess a few tips. Perhaps don't be on speakerphone calling in. I know that you. Oh, sorry about that. Don't be speakerphone. That's just not much of a problem, and actually would advise people not to try to get on speakerphone habit, because putting cell phones up to your face, your head, is very bad for your health and cause cancer.
Yeah,
But
the best way to go about that is to plug a headset in to your speaker on your phone there. That way you don't get feedback, and you're not holding that right up there, because I hear myself when I call in on a regular telephone. It's sometimes hard to hear the host when they speak back to you when you're speaking. So I was just listening to myself as I called into the Freakers Ball Friday, and sorry, Moosey, sorry, Grimmer. I found that I was talking over y'all, so I didn't use my cell phone to call that. But yeah, if you're calling on a cell phone, put your headset on, and that I found is the best way to add in by call. But regardless, caller 714, call back in. We'll add you right back up.
Yep, definitely do that. We have, and even if your opinion's against my opinion, always up for respectful debate here, Voice of Rebellion Radio. Going on with what I'm saying is that with right now, they're really squeezed against what's it seems like 2016 ahead of the events that's going to happen in the United States. They also have been trying to do some stuff in overseas right now. They're really pushing hard against Maduro and Chavez's successor. They've been pushing to infiltrate Cuba. What is happening right now is nothing short of an infiltration of Cuba via foreign businesses and by foreign governments. And what else can what else can be shown here is that also Iceland, the same government that put the bankers in jail in Iceland and allowed their banks to fail, and then sold their banks off and gave the money back to the people, erased all the debts on the money that people owed to the banks. While Icelandic Prime Minister, I believe, has resigned via the so-called Panama Papers, which Panama Papers seem to be conveniently against the leaders that didn't have Rothschild banks in their country. So it's like this leak, or as it may, a sham leak could it possibly be, might have also resulted in that happening. We have Rousseff, who's a very close ally of Russia and a close ally of Maduro, and prior to that, Chavez, and Lula, who was part of used to be president of Brazil, and is now was part of the Rousseff government up till Thursday for impeachment, has been Rousseff is temporarily out of power for the next 180 days. She could or possibly up to 180 days. I think no, it's not even that. Yeah, I think the 180-day trial could end in October, and if she wins the trial, though, I believe that means that she actually will resume power. So it's not over yet, I guess, in Brazil, but it's definitely it's a very critical time. Hopefully that she gets a fair trial, and then she can resume back to the presidency in November, because she was suspended Thursday, which Thursday was the 12th. So if she wins the trial, she'll be back in power as of November 12th, 2016. And that's about all, but this all has happened just in a matter of about 2 months. And we've had the supposed crisis in Venezuela that's been overinflated, and a lot of media manipulation, a lot of pictures that are of out of context shots and stuff like that. I have friends down there in Venezuela. I have one that lives in a very normal town in Venezuela. It's not like he lives in the capital or something like that, where they wouldn't let something like that happen. You can't use that excuse. He lives in Valera, which is a much small, and he's part of RNA News, which every now and then I give a shout out to. He says it's very calm and peaceful in Venezuela, and there's nothing really too out of the ordinary right now. So, I really doubt some of the claims that are being put by the mainstream media, and unfortunately even some of the alternative media. When I have direct contacts to people down there in southern Venezuela who can tell me differently, I have around 30 friends on Facebook who reside in Venezuela currently, 2 that I talk with quite often. Hell, I even know a stripper down there in Venezuela. So it's like I know people of all kinds of journalists, a singer, a stripper, a few just normal people. I think a few people that were inside the Chinese government, and a few just all kinds of other people inside of Venezuela. So I got a good perspective, I believe, on this. I get a first-hand view from these people. It's something that a lot of people that are talking, they can't say. So I think that my word on this is coming from a little bit higher leverage of knowledge, or higher level of knowledge than some other people that are saying about Venezuela. Because it's not a very big situation where I can actually say that I have a lot of people that can back me up on what I say by first-hand perspectives. Because I'm just doing my own research and getting this from other news websites and other sites on the internet. But Venezuela is one where I can back it up with first-hand perspectives. Ukraine, I can also back it up with a few first-hand perspectives as well. And Syria, I have 2 people, I believe, that live in Syria. So I have a couple of first-hand perspectives there. Well, 2 first-hand perspectives there as well, and that's my 3 main topics. So now that I put it laid out like that, which Syria, it's only 2 first-hand perspectives, but I have eyes in different places, and when I lay it out like that, it doesn't sound, people to me before. Maybe I have a little bit more reason to believe what I'm saying, and I think that I need to do something like that, where I can really lay it out there, what kind of cards that I'm bringing to the table. And I got a few aces, and I don't need to put them up my sleeve, because I don't need to cheat. I don't need to do anything wrong, because what I'm doing is right. And what I'm doing here is spreading knowledge. And I got my co-host, studio man, my wingman, my co-host there, Vince, who he's connecting voices of people like me that are spreading knowledge. So that's what Voice of Rebellion is all about. Call back in anytime. I guess he's going to come back in a few minutes. we also, anybody else that wants to call in, just because this caller, we're waiting on him, you can call in also as well. We can have a 3 or 4 way chat going on. I remember having some way back, people like 5-way chats going between, or even like maybe we had 7-way chats at one time on the shows I did. It gets crazy, and it's kind of hard to moderate all these people talking at once. But it's worth having that, having all those people voice their opinions of what's going on. And with martial law, I haven't really gotten. I want to circle back to the main topic of the show, and actually talk about what I said I was going to talk about. What do we expect to see? And martial law, just imagine how Nazi Germany was policemen out in the streets. And I think this is going to be a little bit more technological with cameras. There's going to be, of course, your drones. But, police already have drones. The police have weaponized drones now. And we could, we have potentially, we're talking about checkpoints everywhere, all down the highway. We're talking about where limits where you only can go so far in the country. You won't be able to travel freely across the country. They're going to have FEMA checkpoints, I guess, or like FEMA boundaries. You won't be able to leave your 10-state district, FEMA district, is what seems to have been indicated. So we'll have these like super states, and one governor out of the 10 states will be picked to be. Actually, I think it's 5 states, and there's going to be 10 FEMA districts, and then one governor will run the FEMA district, and they'll become like super governors, and with a lot more power than they currently have. Of course, your president and your government's still at the highest level. Well, you're supposing at the highest level. Who's really at the highest level? Bankers, New World Order. Bankers have the real power inside of the United States government. And FEMA districts are limiting, of course, your travel, which they've already done, made a more complex ID to go along with that. The real ID already law, where there's 22 states or something like that, including Florida, has enacted the real ID law, and what it is it's a even more it's just one more step of making an even more official document that you have to have, and you can't even fly without it. So there's like 4 states that are not going to be abiding the rule, so they're going to make you use a passport for domestic travel. The international travel, of course, you have to bring your passport, but for domestic travel, that's new. Inside the United States, you wouldn't think you would need a passport anytime soon to travel. Considering that it used to be not that long ago, you could go to Canada, Mexico without a passport, and you actually were able to cross international lines, believe it or not, all the way up to around 2001, and then they stopped that, and now it's getting to the point where you won't be able to go out of your city one day without going through a checkpoint and everything. And people living on peninsulas, people living in places where you can easily get blocked in, I suggest you to relocate to some place where out more in the open, because you don't want to be there in martial law where they close down a couple roads and all of a sudden you're screwed. Which, you got to think smart like that, think with some common sense when it comes to actually being prepared for what's to come. Just give me a minute here. We're continuing into the second hour of Voice of Rebellion Radio. In the second hour now, we're going to finally get to more of the topic of the show. I went on a long tangent for the first hour of Voice of Rebellion Radio. We got people that might be interested in watching. People if you got some friends, you got some family, whatever, that want to possibly watch the show, just invite them over, and you can view or listen to the show in 3 different places: freedomnews.com, reallibertymedia.com, and UCY.tv. And also, we're in a few other places, but I don't think you can stream live there. We post our shows quite a few other places, and then at the end of the show, we will eventually be on YouTube, this show, and you find it simply as looking up Voice of Rebellion Radio YouTube, and it brings you right to our show. Voice of Rebellion Radio here at the home station of UCY TV. Call in at 718-717-8296. 718-717-8296. This is Chris J. And continuing on with what I said, martial law, it's going to bring people to, I'll say it's going to bring a lot of people fleeing out into the woods. So people that are living in the woods probably should be careful of the influx of people that are going to be coming in, which will also draw the attention of law enforcement. So there's that to be worried about as well. But I'm telling you, hunkering yourself down in a bunker with water filters and all that will definitely not do much. That's not a realistic plan by any means. The best plan that I could go with is, have a plan to always have a plan out of your situation, and find a way to a least populated area where that's not an Agenda 21 controlled zone, because that's also going to be enforced by law enforcement. So there's going to be very few spots. It's going to be in between, and that's what they do, is to herd people into urban centers so they won't be many places that are not going to be unguarded by law enforcement. But if you can find somewhere where it's not people guarded by law enforcement, that's going to be a place maybe where you can't be surveillance from the sky, and be a place where you can easily guard your house, your compound, whatever you decide to make in that situation. Because if you don't, there's all, of course, in that case is that we're talking about at that point, you do whatever that's necessary to protect you, your family, and your friends, and law enforcement, anybody that you believe is hostile, you'll have to neutralize. So you don't want to be in a position where they can sneak up on you. This is, of course, if you go with the plan that's sustained in the United States. And if no revolutionary activity has started yet, or you need to hunker down and wait before you can join the revolutionary activity, then in that case, you can go with that plan. And this is kind of like the hunkering down plan that people talk about, but you got to go a little bit more than that. You also got to have proper defense weapons. You got to have, you have a plan out at all times. I would say have a good transportation that will that's not just fast, also a tough vehicle. It's going to get almost to the point like Mad Max Beyond the Thunderdome. I would say, if there's many ways to armor cars without, actually having to buy an armored car. Do the basic stuff like that. Have a big vehicle, I would say. I'm just giving out the common sense stuff, but I think some people need to be told. Always have a plan for water, because you're not going to be relying on the system for water, so you need to have your own water supply. So, water supply, the water, you don't necessarily need a water filter. In fact, you can make your own water filter pretty simply. You get a coffee filter and a bottle, sediment, I believe, something like that. And then it's pretty easy. I mean, you can just look it up online how to make your own water filter. Always have some kind of plan. To boil, a plan to get water. I wouldn't even say it, but if you get water, be careful because you don't know what's contaminated or what's not. People here in my city tend to take the groundwater because it's been contaminated by a local military subcontractor, Raytheon, contaminated the water many years ago and still contaminated. So you don't know, they're not going to really tell you that it's contaminated, so you got to kind of figure that out for yourself or just not take a chance and always, when in doubt, clean it. Which, again, sounds like all common sense, but some people need to be told this stuff. All food, always have a way of getting excess food that's not in your storage, because that could be potentially unreliable because you could run out very quickly. Hopefully you know how to hunt and how to actually get animals by yourself in that situation, whatever it means. Now if you need to be in stealth, you probably won't need to go into something beside the rifle. Maybe learn how to use a crossbow, or some silent method, setting up traps and a few other things for that scenario. And but let's go on some how to avoid tracking. Your cell phone, your credit card, your passport, all chips, credit cards, and probably regular credit cards that wouldn't take your word that they don't have some kind of tracking on credit cards that don't have a chip. All that, ditch. Or because if you actually want to avoid being tracked, because they have literally a GPS of where you are at this exact moment. If you have any of those things on you, you're gonna need you're gonna limit your interactions with people because you don't know who is working in martial law. Secret police are everywhere, like what happened in Nazi Germany with the Gestapo. You didn't really know who was working or who's collaborating with the Gestapo. So be careful who you talk to and limit interactions with people, and then try to be as self-sufficient as possible, or with people that you know personally only, because interacting with strangers could be just as bad as interacting with law enforcement in the situation. Be wary of people that are being too helpful, and actually are trying too hard to join your circle, because they might very well be an informant. And that's the case nowadays too. That be wary of people, if you're an activist, that seem to be too friendly, if they're trying to get personal information, because or you feel like they're feeling you out, or they feel like they are trying to get you to do something one way or another. Unless you really believe that thing's beneficial for you. Do not be too trustful of people when you're in that situation. Like, there's obvious red flags, but mainly on the internet, because there's so many of them on the internet, trolls. And it's funny what people fall for, and I think it's funny how as activists, a lot of times they get you get the list of a friend request from big boobed blonde chicks, that has just a few pictures on there, and those are either some kind of scammer, some kind of fake account, or it's a government agent or troll on the internet. Because it's kind of funny that doesn't seem to happen as much to the people that are not activists, but it happens to us activists quite a bit. I got a few of those spam friend requests, and they're kind of funny at times. It's like, what kind of chicks even take pictures like that? Even slutty chicks don't take slutty pictures like that. Am I right? How these fake accounts are set up. So it's almost to an extent an intelligence test to see how gullible we are and how dumb we are if we accept this friend request. but we're not dumb. And we research, and we're very smart. So a lot of us. So this doesn't work a lot of times. They have to go to more deeper methods, like meeting us at activist pages. Which, why would people that are not activists spend a lot of time to discredit activists on activist pages or pro 9/11 truth pages and stuff like that? There always seems to be some people there that are there a lot. Why are they there when they're vehemently against our cause and are constantly discrediting us? Don't they have something better to do with their lives? Because they don't, because this is what they're getting paid to do. So they get paid big money to discredit us activists online. But doesn't that prove that the information war is going the way that they don't want to? Because they wouldn't spend that kind of money otherwise. Our government's pretty cheap, and you see what they pay government employees in this country and what they pay even people of very high importance in this country. So why does it seem like they pay these guys a lot of money for practically nothing? You know, getting paid to be on the internet and bother people and troll people seems hardly like the typical supposedly benevolent nature of the United States government. No, it's not. That's not how it usually is. I don't know where that caller went. I hope they call back. Anyway, we're kind of hate to be left hanging in when that happens, but it happens, and it happens. You have to keep going. You know, I would like. I would like also to say now that I talked about some common sense methods of learning martial law. I'd like to hear some tips from some people that are calling discuss that. Because I'd like to hear survival knowledge and just knowledge of avoiding law enforcement in general. Law enforcement are all over the internet, and in the case of martial law, we still need a way to communicate. And maybe we need to go more primitive method of communication in that way, because we're going to get intercepted every time. Because they were able to intercept during World War II. People were able to intercept stuff put in an Enigma machine where they have 1 trillion possibility to decode it. But of course, they have an Enigma decoder, and they're able to decode the message. I think the message was in their language, so they still had to have someone translate it from that back to English. And it's funny, though, in the end, though, it was Navajo that was the same. The Japanese weren't able to decode because nobody knew Navajo, and they couldn't translate that. So maybe I think we need to learn some kind of Native American language. That's what it sounds like. I need to get some of my Native American friends on Facebook to teach me or teach a few of the activists, and we need to use some language. But they have people that probably know all these different languages. And because the government has been watching Native Americans for a long time, they probably have learned these people's different languages. But hopefully there's some language out there that the government doesn't know out in Africa or Asia that only a few people speak, and then we can learn it, and then they can't understand us. I mean, it sounds like a pipe dream, but it's a possibility. Navajo story, it's always amusing because of how much territory the Japanese controlled and how powerful they were during World War II, and they had to control lands from way out in the Pacific to mainland China. And yet, in the end, it's a language over here in North that's native to North America. The Navajo code talkers that eventually really screws them because they can't decode that language. Only if we could have something as easy as that today. And nowadays, they have such good hackers and stuff that it's very hard for even to do, via hacking method to be able to communicate without them knowing what we're saying. I mean, the only thing I think may feel like Middle Eastern hackers, because I think Middle Eastern hackers are very good. I think Iran has some of the best hackers in the world. And I can tell you one thing, and it's going to sound kind of negative, but I think that because they don't have some of the same fun stuff that we have in the West and Europe and South America and Asia, for example, like drinking and they don't have the same kind of night cult. Well, they have a night culture, but they don't have the same kind of I would say in gambling. That's not. It's more like bad vices too that they don't have. But I'm thinking also like drinking is it goes. I think the complete ban of that's kind of it's definitely I think a little bit unfun. It's like they're kind of serious people in the Middle East is what I'm saying. Is that they also don't have the same the same kind of culture of that goes along with bars and drinking, like all going to all the dancing and stuff like that. So I think what they do over there in the Middle East, maybe they find the hacking and stuff like that for me. It's good because it'll help out the world one day. It's helping out the world right now. The Syrian electronic hacking, the Syrian electronic army has been very good when it comes to cyber protection of the Syrian government and Assad. So can't blame them. And I actually, it's like they're fun in their own way. I should say that Middle Eastern people of all religions, just to make clear, and I'm saying about just one religion of the Middle East, but they're just not what I guess the average American finds fun. I guess. Actually, it's like I'm pretty sure they do all the dancing and stuff like that, or they do the. Over there in the Middle East, they also do the restaurants and all that nightlife stuff as well. It's kind of a misconception. They actually have a very big nightlife in cities like Cairo and stuff like that. It's just like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and a few countries that the United States supports are the ones that are really the ones that are very brutal to women and comes along with also are very controlling of what goes on at night, and they don't allow nightlife. They don't allow anything that really they don't allow anything fun to really go down. I mean, they close down the cities for forced prayer to the Wahhabist religion that they follow in Saudi Arabia, which is actually created to destroy Islam, if you look at the history. But they act like that they're the pure holders of Islam over there with the Saudi Arabia government. Vince, they didn't call. The guy didn't call back in. Now I got Vince back. So I guess somebody else can join in the conversation. I'm just going to put out that number one more time, 718-717-8296, 717-8296. Here at Voice of a Rebellion Radio is around 10:19 Eastern Time here on the East Coast. And it is a very cool show that we're doing right now. Martial law, talk about some more stuff that they expect to see. People want to see martial law, they think the black helicopters, the black vans, and that's not far off because when you look at places like South Korea's fascist government during the 80s, or you look at the Chilean fascist government during the 70s, the black helicopters were used in South Korea one time, and they ended up killing an entire village. And in Chile, they ended up taking away a lot of people with black vans and getting rid of them. So it's those are not myths. Will that be the main source of the oppression or martial law? Probably not. They'll go to different ways and probably different methods to be very unpredictable. But they would skip people at 3 a.m. during the fascist dictatorship in Chile during the 70s, and they would take them out into the middle of nowhere and get rid of them. Simply, they ended up having a big list of disappeared in Chile. These were people that were killed by the Chilean government during that time. And the Pinochet ruled all the way up to 1991. Then he spent his last 15 years in exile in the UK. His last years were in the UK in exile, and he was very close, connected with Thatcher and Reagan, crime cartel. And Chile has went a long way since then. And so South America was all Stroessner, Geiso, the Argentinian junta, the Guatemalan junta, Carlos Andres Perez, and all these guys, these dictators that ran the continent in the 70s and 80s. And where they are now is way further ahead when you look at it 30 years later, since the winding down of Operation Condor 30 years ago and back in 1986, and then the height of it, 1976, around 40 years ago. Around there, that's where they got to the height. That's where not all of them were in power. Andres Perez, who I think he wasn't in power, but some guy, one of his inner circle was in power. Stroessner was in power. The Argentina junta was in power. The Geiso, I think, was in power. Pinochet, of course, was in power. I think the Guatemalan junta was in power. The Nicaraguan narco government was in power. And then a few years later, some of that changed. Like, for example, the Sandinistas in Nicaragua fought back in El Salvador. They had a revolution, and FMLN took power, which both are still power. The SSLN, the Sandinista National Front in Nicaragua took power, and then El Salvador, the FMLN took power over there, which most of the organizations kind of moderated compared to where they were back in the 80s. When both were considered to be like the political ideology of Cuba now, they're most like kind of like somewhere in between Ecuador and Venezuela. It's their ideology today. Not quite as radical as what they used to be back then, but they're still pretty barely anti-imperialist for good reason. But Nicaragua continues to be one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere. I think it's plagued by a bad location, partially, and a bad and sanctions and many other things. They've been worn down by 35 plus years of embargo. While it's kind of like a Cuba scenario where they're also, the second poorest country in the Western Hemisphere via embargoes and stuff like that. But they have a pretty high standard of living because they've been able to adapt despite the country not being wealthiest, able to adapt in other ways, and they ended up in education, healthcare, a few other things. Yeah, it's kind of funny is that how we have the supposed radical candidate of this election, Bernie Sanders, backed away, because back in the 80s he said something pro-Cuban and pro-South American left, and then eventually he retracts it during this election, trying to appeal to the elites, even though that he had to have known from the very beginning that Hillary Clinton was picked to win this election. That's how desperate Bernie Sanders was to try to take the position of corporate spokesman of America. And that's clear up to people that I'm no fan of the Burn Man, Larry Byrne, the Bernie Sanders. Yeah, actually, that's a great skit idea. Like Larry David or Bernie Sanders, they could do something like together, like Larry Byrne with Larry David, and then Byrne with Bernie Sanders, and then they could be some really klutzy old Jewish guy basketball player. It's they're sponsoring a bagel company. And I'll also clear up that I'm not against Jewish people. I poke fun at the fact of how stereotypically Jewish both those two are, Bernie Sanders and Larry David. But I have no problems with Jewish people. Just Zionists, Zionist Jews, and Zionist Christians, Zionists of any religion. But there's a lot of Jews that are against Zionism. So people mistake that. People call me anti-Semitic or racist and stuff like that. But they're heavily mistaken on my what has been my position for the last 3 years, ever since I started the radio, when it comes to Israel. I've changed a few positions over the time on the radio as I've learned some stuff, but I haven't changed my position on the Zionist state of Israel, where I stand on the Zionist state of Israel in relation to the Jewish people, which there is no relation to the Jewish people when it comes to originally to the Torah and to the Jewish people as a whole. There is no relation. There's a relation to Zionist Jewish people. There's a relation to a lot of American Jews, but to the Jewish name as a whole, there's no relation between that and Israel. Israel is an enemy to all humanity. Muslims, Christians, and Jewish people that are being used as pawns in the game, because you think that Israel cares if those poor, the poor Israeli class, the middle class of Israel gets nuked, as long as that it works in the benefit of the super rich bankers that control Israel. I don't think they care. And you see the super rich bankers finance Nazi Germany, and they allowed the Nazi Germany to commit the Holocaust. And a lot of those super rich bankers were Zionist Jews. So Zionist Jews don't have any sympathy. They don't have any sympathy or empathy for their Jewish compatriots. In the end,
But we finally got connected.
Hello?
Hey, is this Benjamin?
No, this is Mindy.
Okay, you got.
What's up? Hello?
yeah, you're echoing a lot. I can hear you talking. You're
Or your
How about now?
Okay, that sounds better.
All right, word.
Right on. All right,
Okay,
this day on Voice of Rebellion on UCY.tv.
What's up?
Hello?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So, caller, do you want to discuss us in particular? Just want to join the conversation, or what?
Yeah, I'm a transgender, so I was wondering how you felt about, people using the toilets.
Well, here's my take on this. I'm going to be very, I'm going to be very bold and say exactly what I have to think about this. Is that to me, I think this is a complete non-issue, and I'm just going to, it's not really anything to do with the show. And that's what annoys me is the fact that people made this big issue that the mainstream media is not talking about many other important issues that are going on right now. There's no coverage about what the United States government is involved in South America, no coverage about the United States sending food to the ground in Syria. But yeah, we're talking about people using different bathrooms. It seems like something right out of fucking idiotic. And I'll tell you one thing is that transgender people have used the bathrooms for years, and there was never a problem. Now all of a sudden there's a problem. The mainstream media created a problem that wasn't a problem.
Yeah, no, like, sometimes I just like to be myself and, my feminine self, and other times I like to
talk like this, because sometimes I feel like I'm just not myself, and I just want to pull.
Hey, let me interject my point of view. Hey, this is Vince.
I just want to pull my wiener out.
All right, we don't get crude though. Listen, hey.
Seriously, on a serious note, girls with big breasts are awesome.
Yeah, you can't argue with boobies. That's what I always say. Listen,
Okay.
I'd like to say I don't know what the whole deal is out here in the hills. You go to the outhouse and whoever needs to go just goes. So, and I got an incoming message here. Let me go see what that is. But no, let's not get crude or something like that. But if
Hey, Chris, let me ask you another question.
Okay, first of all, let me say first of all, I think Chris's point on this is distraction, right? And
Hey, man, let me talk to Chris.
Yeah, bro.
Where's Chris at? What the hell, Chris?
Okay. Well, Vince has reaffirmed what I had to say. That was a distraction. Okay, I guess we'll go ahead. What's your second question?
I got a second question. How do you feel about illegal immigrants?
Well, this somewhat has somewhat relation to what I talk about with this show. Illegal immigration, I think it's a distraction issue. It just divides a lot of people in this country. And I think that, to be honest, corporations of the United States like illegal immigration, but they pretend not to. And the government for a lot pretends like they don't like illegal immigration or connected with those big corporations, but they really sort of like it because other people pay less than the minimum wage. So
I totally agree. We come in peace. Peace on earth. That's all we want as aliens. We don't want, handouts. We just come in peace, and we want to live happily and peacefully, as aliens, and just, smoke weed and stuff. That's all we want, really.
Yeah.
Hey, listen. You got 50 seconds of fame. I thought it was pretty funny stuff. But, there are some questions being asked, and this is really what's being tossed around by most people because it's what comes across the mainstream screen that feeds the masses, the propaganda. So, look, I think everybody...
I totally agree.
Listen, wait a minute.
I totally agree with what you're saying, though. But what you're not understanding is that we're being programmed like robots. You know what I'm saying? Like we're all robots.
Yes. And I think all...
Yes, Master. Can I do as you want? I am a robot here to fulfill the elites. Yes, I am.
I'm laughing too much here. Hey, listen, thanks for calling in. And
hey, man, fuck that.
Or robot, whatever you like to be, I think all the listeners here will support your decision to do it. But really, I think what we would oppose in common here would probably for any kind of mandate, any kind of law that says what one can and cannot do. If you got to go potty, certainly go potty. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if I got to take a shit, how are you going to tell me I can't take a shit because I got a penis? It don't make no sense.
Thanks for calling.
Well, thanks for calling. Yes, your call is valued. Okay, now we're back. Call is officially out of that, and that was something. That was extra. That's really, I don't know. It seems like I fell 10 minutes behind on the show somewhat, but I don't know, the guy was using some kind of voice changer or something like that. But yeah,
I'm sorry.
I was hoping that
everybody was calling to dump them, Chris. I was laughing so hard. I'm sorry I couldn't. There's nothing.
That's our laughing movement.
And
the robot voice got me. I was laughing a little bit there, but
hey, enjoy that for the entertainment value, and if you will or if you won't, but realize
I was
distraction.
hoping somebody would call in and add something of good content to the discussion.
Yeah, and how about if I do that? Can I join you, Chris?
Yeah, of course you can join. I mean, I kind of been talking. I didn't really bring you into the show too much. Didn't give you too much of a chance to Brian. But
a bit of an adventure while you were on, and I guess they called in and then didn't call in and tried to call in, but I had to step away from the mic here for about 15 minutes. Had to make a quick run, but anyways, the topic. Let's see if I can recall what I was thinking I was going to talk about here before I was so distracted and laughing. That was hilarious. Let's say we do have martial law. Let's look at some scenarios, and I'm gonna keep an eye on chat over here because there are some folks over there that are going to really be able to interject very well to this. Let's say there's martial law. Where do we go? I mean, what happens? Do you wait at your front steps there and waiting for the bus to come around, pick you up, take you to the facilities where you will be provided for and kept safe? Some type of re-education may be necessary to bring you into this new society that's going to have to come about because of any certain number of scenarios or events or catastrophes or whatever. But this agenda, the Agenda 21, whatever name you want to hang on, it's all this matter of control and taking people off the land They're stealing all the wealth of the nation. They've been siphoning it off of people through taxes and hidden taxes and licenses and by imposing fines and so forth and interest. It's a big system of theft, and everybody is milked nearly to skin and bone. But let's say, what do you do? Do you run into the woods? Do you make a stand at your house? Do you fight it out? You shoot it out? Do you hide? Do you surrender? What type of scenarios could you see that one might be against?
Me personally, I mean, I've laid it out. Just like, there's many circumstances. There's the false flag. I think is the one they're going to use because you even look at the words by Dick Cheney and Benjamin Netanyahu. Both have very similar words in it. Dick Cheney said that he prognosticated an event worse than 9/11, and he also prognosticated, if you look at what he was saying back in before 9/11, a few months before 9/11, he prognosticated 9/11. Benjamin Netanyahu said he believed New York will be attacked in 3 to 4 years, not if something doesn't happen or anything like that. He just said he believes that it will be attacked in 3 to 4 years in New York City. And that was back in 2013. That's what's scary. So that was 2016. We're 3 years out. I think that the 4 years is more likely the situation. But when he says it, it's right out the horse's mouth. I mean, Benjamin Netanyahu, I think, has more weight in some ways on what happens in the United States than the United States government does. He's almost at a little bit higher leverage of power when it comes to that. So those two saying that seems like a false flag, but there's also, of course, pathogens. I mean, like the Zika virus, a big outbreak. There's the potential of many things. There's also, well, of course, as well, we could have a big natural disaster and use that. They could really melt that out, like another Hurricane Katrina or something like that, a storm that hits many states, but that would only affect the region, so I don't think they're going to go down that route. And also, there's some people even on the internet theorize, some kind of more out there stuff. It's kind of funny where people go with that. I mean, people think that would be an extraterrestrial threat will bring the martial law back. I don't really buy that. I think it won't be anything extraterrestrial. It will be more just extra national, something from Syria, Iran that they'll blame. They'll blame some Persians on a plane for the events that will happen in a false flag that will probably hit New York City. I mean, imagine if, like, for example, any of those boats comes down the same way like 9/11 did, and it's a second attack, and this time it's even more tragic. I mean, imagine how Americans would be. They'd be calling for the nuking of whatever country they believe is responsible for those events.
Yeah, with the quickness. Hey, before it scrolls past me, let me catch up the chat there. A couple of comments here. John Teeter was here, says, I plan to do what John Teeter did, get the hell out of the cities and join the nearest resistance group. I think that's a good idea. Possible suspect says, comment. Theft will continue until the theft is too much work. When theft is too much work, then comes the beatings, indeed. And more here, and keep the fighting until the Russians nuke us. Yeah, there's any number of scenarios that are possible, but there's a big movement of people that are, have already kind of moved out of the cities, because definitely going to be a real bad place to be as a city. And if things go bad and you're there, it's going to be very hard to get out of that city. You got to remember the interstate system. Well, all these cities got the loops around them. Some of them have bigger loops. Like, where's that at? Cincinnati? No, it's not Cincinnati. Oh, way up there north in Ohio, somewhere. Anyways, big, huge. I forget how far around it is, but it's a long ways. And then they got inner ones. So, but these are.
I think Cleveland, Cincinnati is actually. I've been through Cincinnati. That's not like a straight shot. I think Cleveland's the one that's got like a ridiculous loop.
It was Cleveland. That's what. Yeah, there's two of them. One goes way, way out around there. I'm pretty sure that was it. But anyways, most cities are They have those rings set up there, and where there is any kind of break, bridges and so forth, those are easily held. I said easily. For Army to hold people in that city, they're not going to let people out. Mostly, I'd say.
Yeah, it's going to be very hard, and I plan on getting the hell out of where I'm living because this is the worst place possible in the event of martial law because it literally closed down a few roads and there's no way out besides water here where I live. I live out here in this sandbar estate, and it's like a sandbar off of a sandbar is where I live. I mean, it's a peninsula that's part of Florida that's already another peninsula. Is where I live in particular down here in St. Pete. So there's only 3 bridges that take us to another city, Tampa, and you can go to. Then going south, there's down to Bradenton, which is a smaller city. It's really more like takes you out into the country because down there, there's the highway doesn't really bring you into the city. It's just like Klein glances by it still. You can see that, and there's like two roads going north out into the country. If they close down those roads, there's no way out besides a boat. Which I would say that hopefully your boat hot wiring skills are pretty good. And you better learn how to drive one real fast, I guess. And it'll be the Coast Guard all out patrolling to make sure that you don't get away. That's going to be one of the first things that could be done is that the maritime borders are going to be secured via helicopter patrols and boat patrols via the Coast Guard. So really, it would be best to be in a place. If you're going to stay in the United States, you got to get out of the cities and go to a place where you have, like I said, you need to have. Earlier in the show, you should always be thinking of your next step in case that doesn't work. If it's blown, your location, you need to be thinking of the next location you're going to and how you're going to get there. So I would hopefully get into a position where you can go a town hopping. But in the situation of this, we're talking about possibly every town might be controlled. There will be a few towns made that won't be patrolled by federal law enforcement, or sheriffs are completely subservient to federal law enforcement. They might bring in the feds in places that they really need to be sure that the place is controlled. Because, not every sheriff in the country is probably going to be on board. I feel like they've kind of purged any of those sheriffs that would be against that.
Yeah.
Any true law enforcement officials that would be against the locking down the country, and even the generals of it.
You know what? Yeah, we see that happening. And then there's the ones that are duped, that allow all the Fed activity in the county. They can be really good men, and not understand. My sheriff, I gave him a book here a few years ago from, back in 2010, I think it was. I gave him a book, The Constitutional Sheriff. And I talked to him pretty regularly over the years. We know each other by first name. Which is a good thing, and so to have dialogue with these people that are in these positions of authority, seats of decision, is very important. So many times we set each other, we set ourselves against one another, and all these movements and all these labels and the hashtags that come with it. If we don't start really realizing how important this is, that we're all in that same bucket, boiling frogs or whatever, then we're going to have a problem. So being able to communicate one another is just something I think we all need to probably work better to and understand one another. Otherwise, we can't win. We're nearly beat anyways, right?
Well, I think also, this is, to all the people in law enforcement out there, they need to realize is that they're just as expendable by the government, how they see them, as we are. They need to realize that they don't have any immunity by being in their positions, and that they'll be shot and killed just as easy as any of us by the higher-ups, the federals, the feds. Let's look at what's happened in the past in similar situations, like when Stalin was consolidating power in Soviet Russia. He killed like everybody that was in any position lower than him, besides like a few people. So it's like that is proof right there. Is that it doesn't matter how high up you think you are in the system, is that they're always expendable. And elder sheriffs and stuff like that believe that they're going to be somehow not treated as bad during martial law, they realize otherwise, especially them, because they're not really that high uppy. And that's all the feds, the federal police, and all that. Same way is that they start doing one thing that's against the books, and they're in big trouble and will be put in jail. You look at what happened in Nazi Germany. It didn't matter if you did one. If you disobeyed a few commands, you were put to execution, and they court-martialed you and said you did treason. We need to law enforcement officials need to realize that they are one of us rather than one of them, or that they'll be treated good by one of them. I think is what a lot of them believe, because they are at that position. They know they're one of us, but they believe that they're exempt from what will happen to one of us because they are at the position where they are, or they're high up in the totem pole is what they believe, and they're going to be treated good by the people that are actually in control. We got to communicate well, and communication. That it's like I brought this question up. How do we communicate without them knowing what we're saying? How do we stay stealthy in our communications when martial law actually arises? Because they can. I mean, during World War II, it reminds me that even with the use of Enigma, changing it up to such like a randomness of 1 in a trillion, was another Enigma machine they were able to decipher. Then I think they had to translate it back to the language from German to English, and American forces were still able to decode all those German messages. And then, but the funny thing is, it was an unexpected, non-technological, non-advanced method, just using a language they didn't know. Using the Navajo language in World War II, the United States was able to dupe the Japanese, and they didn't even know what they were saying because it was in a language that none of them knew. So I was thinking, maybe there's a language out there that no U.S. government employees know somewhere out in the middle of Asia on a Pacific island or something like that, in the middle of a Burmese jungle.
You know what?
That they don't know that we can learn.
I was re-listening this morning to Jeff Jefferson on The Brink this morning here on UCY.tv, and he and his guest were talking about Papua New Guinea, and God, I can't remember. It was a tremendous number of languages, completely independent of one another, as was, say, Greek to some African language. I don't have that right in front of me, but yeah, it was a really great listen. I can't recall the guy's name, but pretty fascinating information. There were several hundred, at least, languages, if I recall correctly.
Hopefully we can find some language in the middle of a Cambodian jungle that they don't understand, but that seems unlikely. So I was like saying, the best thing we could do is just go to a completely primitive type of more primitive type of communication. Maybe we have to go to like Curry and actual paper messages. It might have to come down to that, or some other. Maybe we could all learn the telegram. I mean, who's down to do that? Learn the telegraph. Or we could just go ahead with our handwritten messages that we curry. But, I mean, I don't know if you got any ideas of because the internet, even like the most advanced advanced hackers could make some code that they wouldn't be able to decipher with their hackers, because they have some of the best cyber experts in the world. Our government, I mean, the only people that have been able to get past the U.S. Cyber intelligence has been China, Russia, and consistently a lot of times Syria, Iran and Syria, I think, have done pretty well. I was trying to come up with a theory of why they have such good hackers over there in the Middle East, but they just they're really good hackers, Middle Eastern people. But and also another thing we got to keep in mind during all this is that what places are not controlled by Agenda 21 rural police that actually have substantial food, water, and all that, because that there's big parts of this country that are locked off by Agenda 21. They're controlled by EPA and other three-letter rural law enforcement agencies that wouldn't how many of those how many places are not controlled by them, but yet are not some suburb or even a town? Because we're talking about if you're trying to get away from martial law, you need to be out in the middle of nowhere. You can't even be in a town somewhere. Maybe a few towns out there, but like I said, is that it's going to be controlled by somebody, either a sheriff or the feds themselves, or a sheriff that's subservient to the feds.
Sorry about that. I was grabbing that information. Yes, Jeff Jefferson and Boona Laurie, and find that at rachels-carson-of-today.blogspot.com. That was a really good conversation. Jeff Jefferson, I always enjoy him. And in the background. And he's actually out there. He's in. He goes around in the South Pacific, Australia, New Zealand, and all about around there. So he's got, looks like maybe a trip to Tasmania, I think, coming up, which would be really, really.
Oh, that would be amazing, Tasmania. Yeah. I mean, I know Tasmania. They got some incredible wildlife there. I mean, that's it's like for people that think Australia is too tame for their wildlife. That's like a little extra for them.
Yeah, quite a different type and variety of life, I guess, down yonder. We got a marsupial or two, I guess, around these parts. Possum, anyways. But.
The only marsupials that exist here in the United States seem to be those like super rich bankers that end up with a marsupial face, but that's different.
For real. Well, there is a lot of different methods of communication. You know, a hand wave, a short wave, and ham radio. I was watching some on how you you can make a network with your routers. I guess it's your routers and all this, you know, your Wi-Fi devices and directional antennas, and link them together. And you know, if you had a high point at a mountain, you could set one there as a relay. But and it would be like a little mini network, and as long as people kept connecting to it, you know, and adding on. Also, when was it? It's been some time ago. Last year, year before, maybe. Wow. Pepper Chicks. She ran a series on shortwave communication, that sort of thing, ham radio. That's a dying art. There's a fella out there, an old man. He's probably dead by now. In Arizona, when I was out there back in 2014, he did that, and he had an amazing amount of knowledge on that. Having been age and stuff like that. That old communication, you know, even Morse code. Do you know Morse code? I don't. That's one of the would be one of the most efficient and simplest forms of you know, conveying information is certainly with the Morse code, because it'd be easiest, I think, way our type of signal to send, and you could set it on something that would play it, you know, and something you could abandon, you know, if that was the case. You know, if we're talking resistance, you know, when the evil empire really rears its ugly two-headed face, realize what it is. It's not America. It's a two-headed face, and it's a where dual citizenship can run a country where all these people are in the club. They're all criminals. They're evil people. Just look. Oh, possible suspect. Yeah, said earlier in chat. Here, I think it was. Here comes Trump and Cheney. Oh my God! Is that not just the pure face of the evil empire?
Oh, I can just imagine that combo right there. Trump Cheney. I don't know. You know what's more alarming than Trump Cheney though? Clinton Cheney.
I've laughed more at Clinton Bush, but that would.
I mean, you know, it's a slight possibility actually. You know, was to see that it went down with this election. The fact that the Bushes said they'll refuse to endorse Trump, and George W. Bush historically has been a pretty good friend of Hillary Clinton. So you know, it's a slight possibility that particular will be made. and Clinton Bush might actually become a reality. You know, I'll give it a 5%. I'll give it a solid 3% chance that actually becomes the ticket at the end of in November, as the theater will be. Well, to stop the extremist nationalist Donald Trump, we must bring in the unity between the D's and R's. So we're going to put the historically Republican, will switch his party to a Democrat for the election, George W. Bush, and Clinton staying a Democrat, and that'll be your ticket. Trump is going to pick somebody that intentionally sabotage his campaign. He'll probably have I was thinking Trump is probably going to end up picking to try to say that go with the "I'm not racist" card. He'll probably pick like Condoleezza Rice or something like that. I'll give that a possibility. I'll entertain that. Kind of Trump Rice. And then he'll even sell. Then at the end, he'll just use the publicity from that ticket to make one more product that he'll sell over in his Asian casinos. Trump Rice.
I'm kind of trying to catch up over here in chat, chuckling a little bit over there. I've got some $2 words I'm going to put up on the internet for sale too, by the way. That was a cue to chuckle.
Yeah, we're closing out the show. We're about almost. Right now it's 10:55 right now. So we got a couple minutes left, and I want to close this out with saying, get this little message across, is that we're not here to sow fear, and I don't think that people should be fearful of the coming events, because it has to. Eventually, the outcome, I believe, will be a revolution after people really see the empire in its fullest, ugliest form. And we should, instead of being pessimistic, instead of being fearful and afraid and hiding in our own shells of what could happen, we need to be optimistic and be ready to fight because of what could happen after all this martial law mess. But we need to prepare for the worst. Prepare for martial law. And I said that I believe that it's almost a definite certainty. And I think that not think that is kind of naive. And to believe that it's a far-fetched conspiracy theory is very, very naive and uninformed opinion to have. It's all the information on the internet right now. I know to the young generation, they don't want to believe it. They don't want to believe that they're coming into adulthood on a very turbulent time in American history and world history. Coming here in 2016 and 2017 could be the magic year, the first year of the Clinton-Bush administration, which would be absolutely horrific for America. But Clinton-Bush, I mean, that ticket is that's laughable, but it's a possibility. And I mean, if you actually watch the theater of the media, which I do, and then to see actually what their opinions of the election are, it seems possible. That Bush will join the Clinton ticket at some point, and probably won't be Jeb either. It'll probably be W himself, because of his former presidential experience. They'll say he's qualified to be the president or to be the vice president, and sit there and do nothing and say stupid stuff. I mean, isn't that what Biden does? So it'll be a perfect successor, and then you have this minority as the president. It's like a similar setup. A minority that pretends to represent the minority. But anyways, we got a few seconds, 45 seconds left. So thanks, Vince, again, for being on the show. And, we're going to have a good ride here these last few weeks before we step away for a while.
Listen, everybody.
It's going to be fun. So people tune in for those next 3 weeks, because the Vince-Chris combo for a while will be coming to an end. So, and also we're gonna have some pretty good shows set up now, and I really put some effort into making sure these next 3 weeks go with a lot of quality.
Point and no return, and nobody can stop it. Malcolm Little, when he knelt before Elijah Muhammad, the comet that killed the dinosaurs, changing the earth. They love to criticize, they always say I changed for the worse. Like prescription pills when you misusing them, nigga. The Templar Knights, when they took Jerusalem, nigga, and figured out what was buried under Solomon's temple, Al-Aqsa. The name is not coincidental. I know too much, the government is trying to murder me. No coming back like cutting your wrists open vertically. How could the serpent be purposely put in charge of the country? Genetic engineered sickness.